All right, let's build this armature. So we have the body. Again, the body's small in proportion to the head. It's about 7 inches tall. Your character should be approximately 12 inches tall if they're a regular human proportions, but anywhere down, definitely go smaller rather than larger. So 9 or 10 inches is fine. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking a straight piece of armature wire and I'm just going to kind of show this angle by angle. So each point I'm twisting, I'm measuring the wire from point to point just to kind of show you exactly where the wire is going to travel along this arm to shoulder. So hand to hand, right? This is going to run all the way through. So each angle I'm twisting it. Every time it bends, it's going to add a little bit of length. So that's the length of one side, and I'm going to fold it in half and twist it. So I want at least that much. I add 2 inches to it just to give myself, when it twists, it's going to shorten, right? And then I also need an extra inch or so per side for the hoop of the hand. So for this one, I added quite a bit. I added about 3, 4 inches per side before I doubled it. You want to have more, have extra. If it comes up short and stubby, then it's a throwaway or you have to reuse it with something else. So I'm going to start off with the first hoop, twist it to the approximate size of the hoop I need. And again, I go back, I'm checking against, have your model sheet handy and double check. So I made the spatula, the hand where it comes from that wrist. It was a little small for what I wanted to do. So, and oh yeah, I found some bead. If you get beads, these are cat's eyes gemstones, or stone, not gemstones, but precious stones. So if you have something for an idea for the eyes, now's a good time to get eyes. So I'm checking this against the hand, and I'm seeing that the hoop comes up short to where the knuckles are. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and I'm just going to mark that for myself. And there we go. So I'm extending that hoop for the spatula of the hand, so that's closer to that farthest knuckle. So that way, when I add a little armature wire on there for the fingers, it will um, be closer to where the knuckle's going to be. And that's it makes it a little bit easier, in my opinion. It's just an adjustment. And I'm always making notes for myself here. You can see the construction notes are coming along on the tracing paper really clear. And you can get the cheapest tracing paper possible. I think I got uh, a whole bunch of them at Blick for like $3 per pad per 50, sheet of 50. So tracing paper is your friend. So here I'm holding it tight with the needle nose. I might go off camera here a little bit. I'm holding it tight with the needle nose pliers, nice and flat, firm grip, and then twisting. When you're doing this twisting action, this is one of the things that really hurts your fingers. It can get twisted funky, like off you want to equal twist. So take this part really slowly and give it a shot. Maybe twist it up. You should be practicing this with your floral wire, with the lighter, easier wire, and you should be have some practice. You should be feeling comfortable at this point twisting this up from your practice wire gesture sculpts, and that's why I had you do those. So I'm holding it, twisting it some more. Remember, this is sped up times 2, so it looks a little fast. And then as I get farther down, I can twist it. You can see where it's off. Now, when you do this with the chuck of the wireless drill, you get, now what I did here is I went too far too fast. I should have stopped and double checked my measurements. So as I go here, corner, bend as I go. If I'm sure that I have enough wire, I'm going to go ahead and bend this at each joint. So I mark that joint clearly so that my arm lengths are perfectly accurate. So I'm going to pull that to the shoulder, have a nice tight grip, and bend that nice solid 90-degree angle down, and then go to the part for the scapula comes in just before it comes into the nape of the neck, and bend that 90 degrees. Use your tools for this. You'll save your fingers. Trust me, my fingers are totally jacked at this point. There we go. Going across. And then you want to duplicate those bends. So over bend a little bit and then bend, flex back a little bit. It tends to be keeps the measurements more accurate than if you don't bend it far enough and then have to bend it more after the fact. That sometimes will truncate and shorten your measurements off. So you don't want that to happen. So again, grip it nice and tight with the needle nose and try not to chew the aluminum up too much with the threaded part, tip of the needle nose. And then this is a little jeweler's clip that has no teeth in it, so it won't mark up the aluminum quite so much. So what I realized when I got here is that, oh, okay, I have enough wire still. Okay. I think I overshot this though somehow as I went. Yeah, so I'll grip it again and finish that twist. This part here, I went too far before I stopped. And I should have stopped just a little short, so I ended up having to rebend it. So double check it as you go. There it goes. Like I just passed the wrist. And again, overbend and then flex back to get nice sharp edges. There we go. So you see the end of that twist is in the middle of the palm where that loop should be. Is like, oh darn. So I have to unbend that. So grab where the wrist is going to be, unbend that wire. It's a pain in the neck, but it'll happen. It's no big deal. Straighten it out as much as you can. So having a hoop at the other end isn't a necessity. I'm just kind of showing you that you can do it. You can leave yourself enough wire to bend back around. You could always just do the whole end of the hoop with your smaller arm floral wire, and that's actually a little easier. But I'm showing you the strongest way to do this so that if you are sculpting on a very intricate hand, let's say you had like Edward Scissorhands or something, Death Note or something that has like really long claws and detail and feathers and things like that, then you might want to have that stronger hoop of the palm of the hand to hold that extra material that dangles off. So that's why I'm doing this one. And that should be it. So I can bring that wire up here and twist it back into the wrist, again using my tools, trying to cut yourself. So get a nice flat grip with it, crunch it together first, as nice and flat as you can get it, and then twist. And then whatever excess is on there, you want to bend, fold that little curl of the wire in at the end. You want to bend that into the form as much as possible and tuck it in there so it doesn't catch anything, catch your skin. And there it is. I'm going to take the end here and I'm just snip that little piece off. And then you can even take your file and just kind of file down the edge just to be safe. Yeah, I'm just preaching safety for you guys. You saw me cut myself the first day. Yeah, you're going to get a little blood magic put into your creation. So if you want to avoid that, be extra careful with the tips of the aluminum. So right now I'm going and adding a little bend in where the elbows, just enough so I remember, so I don't have any guess. I bent that elbow forward just a tiny, tiny bit, so I know exactly where that elbow is going to be. And go the other side, bend it forward just a tiny bit. So you want to like nice relaxed pose to start off with. And then I want to take any coils that might have gotten gimpy or tweaked out a bit and flatten them out. Okay, so the hoop again, I'm reminding you that you're going to have a hoop. You might want to have a hoop for the feet, and there'll be a hoop for the head. And so when you're measuring out your wire, you want to give yourself a couple extra inches here and there. So an extra couple inches for the hoop of the head, which I ended up not putting in the second one, but I did in the first one. An extra inch per foot. So, you're doubling this up, you're bending it for two parts, and you're going to twist it up as well. So there's the measurement on this thing. I think if I did, yeah, it's 12 inches. And the whole thing was only, I think, 7. So I was going 12 inches per side for a 7-inch tall. That's 24 inches of wire it took. And that's for the head, torso, and legs. And feet, of course, right? Okay, so I'm looking at where that armature wire is going to stick up for the top of the head. And you could always attach extra piece in there later. But I'm trying to keep it. If it's all one piece, it'll be stronger, most definitely. If you scab together or twist together separate pieces, it's almost never stronger than if it was one solid piece. Um, and that top cap, even if I'm using foam and have some other strategies for that accessory piece. It's gonna be strong. It's gonna be heavy, and it's gonna really weigh down that neck. So I'm gonna make sure that this torso is nice and strong. I'm holding it firm there and giving it a twist. I'm using my fingers, and I could have held this in the chuck of the power tool and twisted this up to save my fingers. But because it's so small and I'm using thinner wire here, I'm not too worried about it. So I'm just holding it with the needle nose and doing it with my hand, going down to where the pelvis is going to be and doing a little Y at the bottom of the pelvis, going back up to the head, and I'm just kind of bending out that hoop for the head. I could adjust that later as long as I have enough wire there to adjust it. I'm okay. So there's usually a Y at the bottom of the where the pelvis is at. And so where the Y is, I want to give it some freedom from the spine going down to the corner. And then I'm measuring out each point from the hip down to the knee, down to the ankle, and then bending at each point, marking, getting a nice solid bend. There we go. And looks like I'm going to do each side as I go. Either way, you could do one leg first, then do the other leg. But I like to keep double check each joint one at a time. And yeah, I do one side, do each joint per side one at a time to make sure that they are even. You don't want one leg to be longer than the other unless it's part of your design. So your arms and legs equal distance. It's you want precision at the bend joints. Otherwise, it will be pretty obvious to you. I'm leaving some extra bend. If he was crouching, if it was a quadruped leg, I would draw the leg out sideways and I would add extra length here and I would actually hold the wire up to the side view and bend it. I'll show you that with the avian, with the winged creature here. So I'm bending that forward, get a nice solid 90-degree bend. Now, because the extra armature wire that's sticking out here, it makes it a little hard to twist this up. So I end up kind of bending the opposing leg up out of the way. There you go. So I'm just checking how big I want that hoop around the foot to be. And I'm just eyeballing this one. It's going to be covered in clay. If the hoops are not the exact same size, it's fine as long as there's not some extra appendages coming off of that hoop that's going to change the measurements. So I'm being a little willy-nilly uh, in how I bend that hoop, and it shows it's not quite as well done as the other one. So then always grip your pinch point there, and I'm just twisting this around. Not optimal. I'll show you the second one I did. That's going to be stronger than this. If you wrap one wire around the other, it's called lashing. If you lash the wire around like this rather than doing the twist, it's not as strong. And I'll show you that. So this could be a character I did if he's seated or if he's like jumping in midair and have another wire attached at the hip. So that way, the whole strength of the maquette is not going to be come down to being supported by the legs. This works out pretty well. And always using my tools. Your metal tools are going to be stronger than your finger bones, the tips of the meat on the tips of your fingers. So always remember to. And you'll see the leg got a little wonky. It's all bent in all different directions. You want that nice and straightened out, and you want to be precise. So when you go to pose it and get that awesome dynamic pose you're gonna have for your finished your final sculpture, you want to have everything as ready to go as possible. There, I'm just comparing the two hoops to the two sides, just eyeballing it. Get to the ankle heel, pinch it nice and tight, and then wrap that around and lash that. And again, it's a little funky. It gets bent here and there. And this is less strengthening, but it's not going to be as strong, but it's going to still give you a nice grab for the clay. The clay is going to bite on there really well. So that works out pretty good. So this one, because I used the thinner armature wire, this would actually make a good stop motion puppet. I could just make a puppet out of this guy and use different types of clay. There's new flexible clay, latex. There's all kinds of different materials you could put on there. So I'll save this one for later. This particular torso and legs. The arms, I'll lay over the top there for you guys to see. And that's how it's going to attach. I always put it behind when I attach it, not in the front. For the back and shoulders, you don't want the armature sticking through the chest, which will happen a lot in the front. Okay, so that's it for that one. On the next one here, we're going to take a thicker armature wire, and I don't have the gauge off the top of my head. I know someone's going to ask me that, but the thicker of the two types of wire is on this one. So for this one, I'm measuring everything out. So again, it's a 7-inch tall puppet, but it required for this one I went 15 inches per side, so 30 inches worth of wire. And this one I'm going to skip the hoop of the head and it's going to go straight into the pinch for the top. So this one would be much, much stronger. And I'll show you in class just how much stronger this wire is. At the end of the video, I do a little tension test on it. I give a little flick, little bounce, and see how much it bends back and forth. So I'm pinching it nice and strong with the needle nose nice and flat to get started. And this one I'm going to put it in, show you how to put it in the chuck, which I showed you, I think, the first day of class we had our materials in there. So I'll put it in there nice and flat, crank it tight. And you want to know how much the measurement is, how much of it's sticking inside the chuck of the tool. So whatever's sticking out there, I want to be pretty certain. So I think I double check this again and get it in there, and I start pinching it and twisting it, and it comes loose, and I take it out and put it in there again. There we go. So take your time with this because it'll get off and twist all weird. If it does, not the end of the world. So double checking again. Is that sticking out? About an inch. I think I wasn't sure, so I wanted to be certain that it was about an inch. Put it back in there, crank it in there. This time I want to get nice and tight and figure out it's going to go. Now, how much it's going to tighten up? Yeah, if I wanted extra hoop to come out for the bulb of the head, then I would. So that's about 4 inches. How much it's going to twist up when you wind it up? I gave myself an inch there. It's not an exact science. I never know. I think I gave even more. A little more is a little usually better because you can always snip some off, but if it's short, you can't see how that didn't twist very well there. That's because it was loose in the chuck. So what I'm doing here is I'm readjusting, um, getting a different tool that's going to pinch the two sides together strongly. So if those two sides need a solid pinch, so when you twist, there it goes, you get a nice curl. And you can see that did not shorten up an inch. Like that only shortened up maybe half an inch. And again, when you're doing your little test ones, you see how much it does. So you see it's sticking out. It's an extra half inch. That's fine. I'm going to run with that. I'd rather have it stick up a little more. And now I can move on to the Y section for the hips. So I'm going to bend out that little Y and then pick exactly where I want the hip socket to go for the femur up into the pelvis. So I bend that Y out, over bend it first, and then you can always flex it back in. So for these ones, it's pretty straightforward. I don't have to measure too much. I can just kind of hold with my finger where it's going to go, bend that down. There we go. And then do the other side. Got off camera a tiny bit. Yeah, this armature wire's a little thick for this. Actually, I would have not used wire this thick. But if it's that strong, though, I could really do something cool with it. I could like run a rod through it and have it like hanging off the wall and do something really fun. So there we go. So I'm not going to do the extra post sticking out the bottom of the feet. I'm going to stick to the hoops. So after doing the spine, I got a little more accurate for just how much it's going to shorten. So it's only going to shorten up maybe 1/4 of an inch or so. So when I bend that hoop, I'm going to give myself that little bit of extra space and then bend where the hoop's going to be. That's not for the post that's going to come at the bottom of the ankle. I'm not doing that. I'm giving myself the little extra space for how much it's going to shorten up when it twists, right? So a hoop for each foot. Do each one at the same time so that you don't get off and have one leg shorter than the other. Okay, so I'm just double checking as I've been being really careful that the other leg's going to have about the same bend arc. So as I bend, I'm doing a little at a time, a little at a time, trying to keep it on the same axis. I don't want to get off and have it bending forward or backward and keep it bending sideways. So I'm doing a little curl twist action with the tool. There's the end of the 2 feet right there. And those are really, really close to accurate. So now I got to bend that hoop in with this thicker wire, which is hard on the fingers. So I'm getting in there and I'm going to crimp it nice and tight with the needle nose. Pinch where that heel, bottom of the ankle is going to be, straightening them out so they're nice and straight. There we go. And that way, when I go put this in the chuck and twist, it's going to, power tool is going to do all the twisting action for me. So I'm just kind of bending it out again and bending it back in to get those hoop curls just right for the feet so that they're even. So you have take an extra 5 or 10 minutes on this. Make sure your feet and hands are the same size and the wrists and the ankles at the same length. I'm laying it out against what I drew for the hoop of the foot. Now this is the hardest part I had last night. Getting that hoop for the foot correct, then bending it flat enough so that the chuck of the tool can grab it, and then twisting it, and then bending it back out again, back into a hoop. This was tough. So I'm thinking it might be a better way to do this, but yeah, I think just smashing the hoop together flat and then re-bending the hoop out is probably the best way to go. So I end up putting this in there, and it's not as tight because the hoop's still in there. So I end up flattening it against itself. Get a nice flat grab on that backside. It's got to be a tool that's going to grip and lock and hold the two wires flat. Twist this chuck nice and tight, and then really slowly, look at that, nice coil. Boom. And if it's from the hip bone to the ankle, we're happy. Get the other side, measure again. This is times 2 speed, and I've done probably hundreds of these at this point, so do not try and do this as fast as I'm going, okay? Take your time with this part. There we go. So I flatten the hoop out so the chuck can grab, twist the chuck nice and tight, go back up and pinch right where I want that hip joint to be. Get channel locks, go around the wire so that it locks the two pieces flat next to each other, hold tight and twist very slowly, adjust if I need to, back it up to the hip, and try and get that twist as equal as possible, and you can always twist up a little tighter. If you over twist it, it's not as easy to untwist this thicker wire back out, so go little at a time, and then you'll be much happier with the end result. And so what I'm doing here is I'm flattening the angle so that we have like, I reopened the hoop, right? So that's what I mentioned. It's off camera, but I had to bend the hoop back out again where the feet were. There we go. And now I'm flattening the wire out so the feet are nice. So when I bend it forward, he's the starting position, your A pose or T pose. This is the A pose where the arms are out at an angle, like a letter capital A. And now I grab that, and this is also really important for precision. The tricky part is bending the back of that heel. I wish I was on camera for that better. Sorry about that, guys. But you want to bend that foot forward at a really precise 90-degree angle and flatten it out and making sure it's at a nice 90-degree L turn. You can see the leg, there's a little bowed, a little wonky. So I'm straightening all this out. You're straightening it out so that we can bend it just at the joint positions precisely for your poses. So you want all of this stuff evened out, really nice. Get it straight, get the two sides equal, get as good of a pose, rigging pose. And when you do this for digital, you'll have the same. The tools in digital are so nice. You can mirror things so that you do one side really perfectly and then just mirror it over and it'll automatically do it the other side. Checking the side view here, this is really important as well. So it's a little bit, tiny bit longer than what I need. That's good because I want to bend it at the knees. I want to bend the spine just a tiny bit where the pelvis is, that forward pelvis bend, the curve of the spine up to the torso and the forward bend of the neck. So I'm straightening the legs out, straightening them out, making sure there's no um, weird bend. The metal tends to remember the angles it's bent at, so you got to kind of over bend and flex back, so that way when you go to pose your puppet, it's not trying to go back into a previous bent position that you had it before. Okay, so those are the two. This is the thinner one. So this one on the left here could be a stop motion. It could be puppet armature. This one on the right, it's super strong. It's barely bending at all. And that one's going to hold for a master, for the master sculpt or the master mold you would make for a main character or a maquette that you could put a couple pounds of clay on, and that's it. Ta-da.